tycoons are in many ways the lifeblood of society.
They're the most competitive people you will ever find.
Inside the secret world of the mega-rich are some of the most powerful people on the planet. This time, China, the second largest economy on the planet.
I mean, if I didn't see a new high-rise in the morning, I felt a little jittery.
The world's factory that also mass produces billionaires.
Many of the stories are like, wow, hold the phone, it's incredible.
But its tycoons have to respect the rules imposed by the party.
Xi Jinping simply will not tolerate any tycoon who openly challenge the party.
China, a nation of over 1.4 billion. It's generating over 200 billionaires a year, faster than anywhere else in the world.
China is a kind of billionaire factory.
Today's China has been coined the Bling Dynasty. It's an explosion of ostentatious wealth after decades of oppression.
I watched China go from bicycles to Bentleys.
The fanciest clothes, handbags, lots of different jewelries, up to tens of thousands of dollars.
And the people driving this incredible growth are China's tycoons. These men and women are changing the world and the way we live in it.
You know, China moves fast. It's got so many people and so much ambition and so much skill.
But China's tycoons are facing a new threat. They are at risk of becoming pawns in an economic Cold War between China and the West.
As Americans, we should all be concerned about any company beholden to a foreign government to burrow into the American telecommunications market.
And China's population has become less tolerant of its homegrown ultra-rich.
China is one of the most unequal society in the world today, in spite of having a Communist Party governing it.
With shades of the hardline past, alarming news reports like these highlight how President Xi Jinping has taken extreme action against some billionaires.
He was spirited out of that hotel along with his bodyguards and then taken to the mainland.
Even among the most powerful Chinese tycoons, no one is above the party. Jack Ma was one of the planet's wealthiest men. He formed the online marketplace Alibaba in 1999. His flamboyant personality, on clear display in some bizarre yet memorable performances, saw him as the fun, friendly face of China's .com boom.
I always say you're making progress, so see, what's the next step?
High quality man. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you so much.
Alibaba connected China to markets around the world.
China, you sell everything from textiles to fruits to heavy machinery to technology to toys. They've taken away the need to travel to China to go to a manufacturers. You don't have to do that anymore. You use Alibaba.
Alibaba came from nowhere to break New York Stock Exchange records in 2014. The listing made Ma the richest man in China.
And to make a splash the size that they did, it had enormous symbolic value within China.
And the man behind it became China's most famous, most extrovert tycoon. His performances are eccentric and extravagant. But who really is the man behind the mask who rocked global stock markets? Ma Yan, or Jack, was born in 1964 in Hanzhou in southeastern China. His upbringing was full of hurdles.
The story of Jack Ma is really the story of China. People said he wasn't smart enough. People said he wasn't capable enough. People said he was harder working than he was maybe capable, but he was persistent.
In 1972, an event happened that changed history and Ma's life. President Nixon broke tensions by visiting China. He visited Ma's hometown, and this visit created a tourist mecca overnight.
Jack Ma offered to take lots of foreigners around the city on free tours if they would teach him English.
These Western tourists opened my mind because everything they told me are so different from the things I learned from the schools and from my parents.
Ma realized his route to prosperity was by connecting with the West. But he had many setbacks on the way.
He was not an academically gifted student.
I failed primary school test for 2 times, and I failed 3 times for the middle schools.
He famously wrote to Harvard 10 times, rejected every single time. There's a great story that when KFC finally came to Hangzhou, every single person got the job but him.
When I tried to be a KFC person, rejected. When I tried to be a policeman, rejected. I want to be a hotel waiter, rejected. So I get used to it. As an entrepreneur, one of the quality I have is that when I'm rejected by people, I get used to that.
Amateur video shows Jack's popularity in his first job as an English teacher. But it was a trip to the US in 1995 that he saw a way to make it big. A friend showed him the internet. His first efforts with what he learned were caught on camera.
My friend said, this is internet, search whatever you want. So I searched the first word, beer. I don't know why, because it's easy to spell, baby. But there's no beer from China. So we made a small, very ugly looking page called China page. I got a phone call from my friend. He said, Jack, you know, you got 5 emails. I said, what is email?
Jack Ma realized the web could connect foreign businesses to China.
He came back to China and Alibaba turned into this e-commerce behemoth.
At home, Ma became incredibly popular. But some began to say the fame had gone to his head.
He's very well known for his karaoke appearances at Alibaba parties and events. That became more eccentric as time went on. But is he sort of like this billionaire playboy?
The charisma that had charmed the tourists also charmed the global power players. Political leaders began to reach out to him as an ambassador.
He was very, very visible, not just doing TED Talks, but also with political leaders.
I'm starting to pitch already.
Those are the kind of things that the government does.
One of the most talked about encounters was in early 2017 when he met the president-elect.
Jack and I are going to do some great things, small business, right?
We'll focus on small business.
Thank you so much.
Jack Ma went and met with Trump and then had a press conference with Trump pledging to create 1 million jobs in America through e-commerce. My guess is that was not sanctioned by the party.
Then in 2019, amidst rumors he was forced out, Ma retired from Alibaba to concentrate on his spin-off, Ant Financial. He planned to float Ant on the stock exchange, a sale that would put him back on top as the richest man in China.
The IPO of Ant was pulled at the very last minute.
The Ant Group's listing in both Shanghai and Hong Kong have been suspended.
It was going to be the largest IPO in the world at that point, of almost $35 billion raised. So this was a huge shock to everyone, to the whole world.
Some believe Xi Jinping blocked the sale after Ma mocked the government at a business conference.
好的创新不怕监管， 但是怕昨天的方式去接管。
Jack Ma had made this very, very offensive, incendiary speech to China's top banking regulators.
中国的金融的当铺思想。
Then Jack Ma disappeared.
They had to make an example of him because he was the biggest, the most admired, the most successful in people's eyes. If you're going to give a signal to billionaires, especially the tech billionaires, and who's your daddy, you bring down Jack Ma. That lets everybody know that everybody's fair game.
The man who brought the Communist Party to power in 1949, vowing to eliminate capitalism and class, is Mao Zedong. Families were stripped of their wealth and many brutally killed. The banning of private farm ownership also led to tens of millions dying from famine.
The first 25 to 30 years of Communist Party rule under the Mao Zedong, China underwent some pretty horrific experiences, including the Great Leap Forward, where in about 3 years, 40 million or more people starved to death.
In the early 70s, while the West enjoyed booming growth, China's soul was crushed.
China no longer had belief, whether it's in religion or in the traditional Chinese culture. So what did they believe in? They believed in making money.
Life changed in the 1980s. Relations with the US thawed, and Mao's successor, Deng Xiaoping, tried to free up the economy.
Come 1980, China takes an enormous pivot with reform and opening. Foreign direct investment starts to roll in, and we start to imagine China's development story as the manufacturing miracle that so many of us are familiar with.
China encouraged foreign firms to form partnerships, providing investment and training to China's millions. These companies could tap into China's vast, skilled workforce.
You see these companies moving to China as a means of accessing cheap labor, cheap land, cheap production.
Multinationals from all over the world came in. China was the new gold rush.
By 1985, most urban families and half of rural families owned a TV. For a few, Hollywood provided glimpses of the free world and dreams of a better life.
They crave the big houses, the big cars, the technologies, everything they could see in American movies, they want.
But the growth was rife with corruption. The people started asking for a different China, a democratic one. China's revolutionary moment came in 1989. Around 1 million people descended on Tiananmen Square to protest. The world watched as violence erupted.
Hundreds, perhaps thousands of people were killed. It was really an assertion that Communist Party control over China was always the most important goal for China's leaders.
Deng Xiaoping crushed the uprising, but continued launching several special economic zones in the south that would encourage foreign investment.
He went south, planted a tree in Shenzhen, symbolic of there will bloom a new city, there will flourish a new economy, And it really did.
People flooded from the countryside to find work. The migration created enormous demand for homes. And Deng changed the laws to enable real estate trade for the first time.
You couldn't privately own your own property. Based on your station in the factory, you got assigned this apartment. In the late 90s, real estate developers could now build buildings, and then individuals could actually buy rights to live in these buildings.
One man spotted this as an opportunity to get rich. He went on to become China's wealthiest tycoon. Wang Jianlin is the founder of Dalian Wanda, a global conglomerate. Glossy and bold marketing on its website portrays its position as the world's largest commercial property enterprise. It owns shopping malls, cinemas, sports teams, luxury hotels, and theme parks. Wang Jianlin was born in 1954. His father fought for Mao's Red Army. At 15, Wang too became a soldier.
He eventually ended up in charge of a state-owned property group. When that privatized in the early 90s, he emerged as the majority owner.
The Bentleys and the Mercedes were everywhere. It was such a booming business. Houses were over the top, very Trumpian actually, with very bad taste of gold and glitter and anything to look lavish.
Wang Jianlin also realized burgeoning city populations would become consumers and set up shopping malls all over China. In the early 2000s, Wang took an audacious leap directly into the heart of the USA.
He famously bought the American AMC cinema chain.
Wang's shopping spree in entertainment continued into Hollywood.
His firm, Dalian Wanda, will buy legendary entertainment. They produce Godzilla, Jurassic World, but also the Dark Knight trilogy.
A big thing for him was Wanda as being the major player in entertainment in China and ultimately also abroad.
In 2016, Wang became Asia's richest man, worth over $28 billion. He often celebrated his successes at company events by confidently, yet awkwardly, serenading his staff. Good reason to belt out a well-known folk song.
He's got a flamboyant personality, but different from Jack Ma.
But like Jack Ma, the tide turned on Wang. The party were apparently unhappy with the level of Wanda's debts, and his Hollywood trophy purchases had hit a nerve with US politicians. And as some of his assets failed to deliver, Wang's roller coaster ride was over.
Wang then sells off a lot of his assets and then takes a step back from the limelight.
But Wang Jianlin was only able to lower his profile so far. His son is a prolific social media influencer.
In China, there's this idea that's called Fu Er Dai. It's second generation rich. And Wang Jianlin, he has a very prominent, wealthy son named Wang Sicong. When you think of the flashy playboy, global, cosmopolitan, very spendy, in 2015, he bought gold-plated Apple Watches for his dog.
Cute snaps of the pampered pooch, proudly showcasing the $10,000 timepieces, appeared on the dog's social media blog. The post went viral for all the wrong reasons. It was symbolic of a generation of ultra-rich kids.
You can imagine that sitting on the side of the road eating $1 street food, and then you see a Lamborghini fly by, the ultra-wealthy flashing their wealth, was beginning to create more distaste.
Overt displays of wealth and debt may have been tolerated before Xi Jinping, but changes were afoot. In 2012, a new paramount leader was elected.
我宣誓，忠于中华人民共和国宪法。
Xi Jinping has a strong communist bloodline. His father fought in the Red Army in the 1930s. After university, he followed his heart into the Communist Party, where he climbed the party ranks before becoming one of the world's most powerful men. The Chinese Communist Party has always played an instrumental role in the lives of China's wealthy.
For Chinese billionaires to become successful, they need to be connected to the government in some way.
Every company in China has to answer to what the party wants. Not doing so puts one at huge peril.
Xi Jinping had made it his first priority to clamp down on the corruption that was blighting China.
我们党作为执政党，面临的最大危险，做到有案必查，有腐必惩。
Xi made 1.5 million anti-corruption arrests. Many simply vanished or were put in prison.
He had a real good case to make because the party was in real trouble. There was no institution that was trusted.
And there was no safety to be found abroad.
He first introduced something called Operation Fox Hunt, which has since been superseded by Operation Skynet. And in some cases, they were involuntarily helped to return to China. Some people will call it basically being kidnapped back to China.
Some allege the real motive behind Xi Jinping's anti-corruption drive was to remove any potential political enemies and cement his power. Some tycoons were jailed for lesser offenses, like Jimmy Lai from Hong Kong, whose crime was commemorating the Tiananmen Square protests. Hong Kong had once enjoyed the freedoms of the UK to protest, but under party rule, that changed. In 2020, China introduced a national security law, making it easier to arrest people after mass demonstrations in the city. There's one man who's avoided the scrutiny of Xi Jinping. Instead, US intelligence has been the thorn in his side. Ren Zhengfei is the founder of telecom Goliath Huawei. His company manufactures Wi-Fi network hardware and has annual sales totaling $100 billion. Born in 1944, Ren Zhengfei lived through the Cultural Revolution. But video portraying his life through the company lens showed how, despite this, he always considered himself lucky.
在我那个小时候，我在那个县呢，这个乡镇呢，其实是很贫穷的。我们家庭就算好一点的，因为我们父母都是教师嘛。那好一点的标志呢，我们家炒菜是可以放盐的。
Ren Zhengfei started off in the Chinese military, and eventually he left the military and started Huawei, this kind of upstart telecommunications technology firm.
Archive footage from the early years showed how Ren started Huawei with a little over $5,000 from a decrepit apartment in Shenzhen. It gave an insight into bygone telecom equipment that helped the company quietly make a meteoric rise.
Huawei's initial success was linked closely to its contracts with the Chinese government and with the Chinese military.
Huawei's architecture was ambitious too. Each area of its research and development campus represents a European city. It even has its own metro system.
They're just an R&D machine.
By 2016, when that investment started paying off, Huawei became a major point of contention in the USA.
They would come in and undercut on price. It looked like they were carrying out a government mandate.
The company appeared to come from nowhere, and in the summer of 2017, Huawei's sales outstripped Apple's. Concern in the West increased when Huawei leapt ahead in the 5G race across the globe. 5G networks are set to power the next technological revolution.
If you do not stop Huawei, the majority of the world is supplied by the Chinese, and the West isn't. And so that is a major security risk.
Ren cites his success to being privately owned. But the true holding of Huawei is a contentious issue.
The problem with Huawei is you just don't know. They say it's employee-owned through some very, let's just say, not very convincing ways.
Concerns that Huawei is a Trojan horse of the Chinese government only escalated.
As Americans, we should all be concerned about the potential for any company beholden to a foreign government to burrow into the American telecommunications market.
The fight became personal when the DOJ charged Ren's daughter, his chief financial officer, with fraud and conspiring to violate sanctions. After 3 years under house arrest, the charges were dropped. Ren Zhengfei fiercely argued its independence.
We will never undertake any spying activities, and we will never accept anyone's instructions to install a backdoor.
The US stepped up their campaign, urging other countries to boycott Huawei.
We convinced many countries, and I did this myself for the most part, not to use Huawei because we think it's an unsafe security risk. It's a big security risk.
But Huawei remains the world's biggest supplier of telecom's network gear. Ren has the full support of the party.
Obviously in the United States, Huawei is a dirty word, but in most of the world, Huawei is one of the leaders in this technology and is really making an impact on places where the United States might not have the best reputation.
没有特朗普的这么宣传，全世界人民不知道华为这么厉害，这么好。所以我们的市场空间是特朗普帮我们打开的。
Ren Zhengfei is one of many tycoons to have a daughter at board level. An extraordinary amount of women have smashed the glass ceiling in China.
There's hardly any females in senior government positions. So what you can do is you can go out and make money. Chinese women are formidable.
In 2021, the country had a total of 85 female billionaires, 2/3 of the global number. China's one-child policy imposed between 1980 and 2016 is considered a factor. It was brought in to curtail a booming population growth.
If you had a second child, you would be subject to heavy fines. You'd probably be fired, and your second child would be ineligible for the free education.
For family businesses, if that child is female, then they're going to still pass on control of the family business to that one child, their daughter.
But many women have made it without inheriting a business. One such lady is Zhou Chunfei. In 2017, she became the richest self-made woman in the world. Zhou Chunfei is known to have a sharp and daring business mind.
不能只是担心失败，我就不去创新。像企业来讲，我相信，但是10个创新里面有5个就已经，我觉得已经很成功了。
China is one of the biggest smartphone, not just creators and manufacturers, they also put together the smartphones for all the non-Chinese companies in the world. It's sort of like the story of the California gold rush. The guys who really made it rich, they're sort of the person selling the pickaxe at the beginning of the gold rush.
Zhou Chunfei found her gold rush selling smartphone screens. Her story encapsulates China's rags to riches narrative.
She was born in central China to a poor family, and her father had a lot of influence on her.
Her mother passed away when she was 5, and her father was injured in an industrial accident, so he injured his hand and he was blinded.
The accident left them in dire poverty. Pressed to make ends meet, 16-year-old Zhou dropped out of school.
She worked at a factory and the conditions were terrible. And so what she did was she wrote a resignation letter and basically talked about how she wanted to leave and for these specific reasons. And her boss was so impressed by it that he actually promoted her.
In 1993, with just $3,000 in savings, Zhou started her own business called Lens Technology.
They were making the glass for watches. And then Motorola approached them to help them with their new Razr mobile phone.
Zhou got her second big break when the iPhone launched in 2007, and she was chosen to supply the screens. She put up her apartment as a guarantee to get a loan for new equipment.
From there, it just kind of took off. They produced the really high quality screens for Apple as well as for Samsung.
In 2020, Lens profits almost doubled to $31.6 billion. Zhou's lifestyle now couldn't be further from her humble start. Manufacturing tech for the world created a nursery for new talent in China.
We're taking back their control, 'cause that's how we roll.
The city of Shenzhen became a breeding ground for tech startups. The region experienced massive growth, building on the ideas of Silicon Valley.
It's just absolutely incredible. It's kind of like some artist's rendition of what the future will look like with flying cars and the Jetsons.
Never have I ever felt so high, high.
And money started flowing. And you started seeing the fancy cars, parties. When somebody got their company funded, they'd have a party with ice sculptures.
With a population of 17 million, Shenzhen became a tech mecca, snapping at the heels of Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley sort of feels like that 45-year-old who's already had a couple of successful ventures, kind of like the middle-aged entrepreneur versus that hungry, driven startup that used to define the area.
One company formed in 1998 now sits in the top 20 largest tech companies in the world off the back of smartphone app technology. Ma Teng, aka Pony Ma, is one of the richest people on the planet. He co-founded Tencent, an internet colossus and gaming empire. He also has stakes in Tesla, Spotify, and Snapchat, among thousands of other startups. Pony Ma grew up in Shenzhen. China's rags to riches story had become more of an investor's dream by the time he came of age.
Pony Ma was a quiet child, a nerd. He really liked astronomy. His parents were kind of wealthy, got him a computer, which he got really into. He started his first company.
The company was called Tencent. He set it up with classmates. His big break came in 2011 when he launched a super app called WeChat. China's massive population skipped over computers, instead using the more affordable smartphone. WeChat became its backbone.
WeChat is kind of like your WhatsApp and your Facebook and your Twitter all combined into one on steroids.
From when you wake up in the day, from where you read your news, from how you book a restaurant, to how you pay off your debt, to how you pay for the subway. I mean, all of these things can be accomplished within WeChat, which of course Tencent owns.
Cash is useless in Shenzhen. Everything is through a QR code. I scan you, you scan me. Even stands on the side of the road. Click, click. All right, there you go.
Pony gave Tencent a further boost, moving into the gaming industry. While building its own games, Tencent swallowed up a medley of other gaming firms. It is now by far the world's largest video game vendor.
He's building on that left wall.
But Beijing soon pulled the plug on Pony Ma's gaming exploits. So-called Grandpa Xi was unhappy with the time kids were spending online. He introduced laws to limit access. Under 18s could now only play for 1 hour on Fridays, weekends, and public holidays.
The concern that the government had was if you're in front of the screen the whole time, your social skills become quite retarded that way. Basing your life on likes, which are things that we talk about in the West, is quite a concern. It's just that the Chinese government has acted on it.
The gaming laws were part of wider reforms that would have a devastating blow on China's tech giants. President Xi empowered his crackdown regulators to go after platform companies like Tencent. They were accused of creating monopolies. Pony Ma has always denied that Tencent has acted as a monopoly. Tencent was one of several fined by China's regulators, and its value plummeted in mid-2021. It had a merger deal blocked, and new registrations to WeChat were temporarily suspended. Perhaps reflecting on the treatment of his competitor Jack Ma, Pony Ma appeared instantly compliant.
In this new era of tight political scrutiny of China's billionaires, Pony Ma's approach has been much smarter than that of Jack Ma. Pony Ma, I think, has recognized that China's tycoons need to keep a low profile.
Jack Ma actually reappeared in January 2021. In what was coined the hostage video, he was seen addressing village teachers on state media.
今年因为疫情的原因啊，我们不能在三亚见面。
But Ma's company, Ant Group, was broken up by regulators. Xi Jinping wants a fairer society, expecting the wealthy to be more charitable. Jack Ma is now concentrating on philanthropy. Several others have followed suit, leaving senior posts.
There's a sense that people that have done really well ought to have more sense of social responsibility and be willing to give back.
And one Billionaires company donated $375 million to fight the world's COVID pandemic. Jian Yiming is the founder of ByteDance, better known for its addictive app, TikTok, the most downloaded app in history. Only around since 2012, TikTok has sensationally dwarfed Facebook, Insta, and BuzzFeed.
It's basically a short video platform that also allows folks to live stream whatever they're doing.
The app uses artificial intelligence to get users hooked.
That is really the secret sauce of ByteDance. They were one of the first companies to use recommendation algorithms at scale.
By 2021, TikTok boasted 689 million users, with over 2 billion downloads worldwide. Jian Yiming set up ByteDance from a small apartment at the age of 29 with his college roommates. A marketing video from ByteDance's YouTube page plays up Yiming's rags to riches story by returning to the apartment where it all started.
还有欠电费那个跳闸居然欠电费。
He grew up in a middle-class family. He was not by any means very wealthy.
Yiming had several attempts at launching apps, but his real success with TikTok came in 2017 when he bought the lip-sync app Musical.ly that was wildly popular in the US and Europe. It gave the app an instant international audience. All had been well for Yiming until TikTok hit the headlines in the West over censorship.
The Chinese-owned social network TikTok has apologized to a US teenager who was blocked from the service after she posted a viral clip criticizing China's treatment of the Uyghur Muslims.
I can't open TikTok. My phone is blocked from even using the device. It's just a black screen and it won't let me go into the app.
It was also accused of deleting articles critical of Chinese authorities. Like Huawei, this created concerns about its true ownership and the privacy of its users' data.
President Donald Trump tried to ban TikTok in the United States.
President Trump has mentioned impending action on TikTok, and for good reason. With parent companies based in China, apps like TikTok are significant threats to personal data of American citizens.
TikTok said Ms. Feroza's account freeze was not related to the Uyghur video and was a moderation error. It lifted the ban after she raised concerns. TikTok has consistently denied it would provide user data to the Chinese government and says personal information is safe and remains in the US. Its US operation was spared by a federal judge before Biden revoked Trump's ban in 2021.
Frankly, the reason TikTok was so successful is it took the average consumer, and certainly the average senator, years to figure out that it was a Chinese company.
And despite Jian Yiming becoming Asia's richest man, in 2021 he left his posts. It is thought that his skills are being realigned with party ambitions.
He wants to do something even more impactful for the world. I believe he's working on those other new frontier technologies now.
And one frontier technology to have taken off is the drone. China is home to the world's largest drone company, DJI. Frank Wang is one of China's formidable baby billionaires.
Frank Wang was China's youngest billionaire, and he's always been very interested in helicopters, so it's not surprising that drones became his forte.
The commercial drone industry is big business. It's worth well over $18 billion globally. China dominates. DJI has an 80% share of the market. Drones are today used in many inventive ways, from delivering medication and even organ donations to reaching awkward places in industry and covering large areas of land. The future looks ambitious for transport. Light shows are already challenging firework displays to be the most awe-inspiring. Wang's dreams began when he crashed a remote-controlled helicopter his parents bought him. He decided to fix it himself.
He got interested in controller technology for helicopters, and from that hooked up with friends and partners.
Wang headed to Shenzhen in 2006 to find his fortune.
He just innovated and innovated. His personal drones were coming up.
Like many other Chinese success stories, it was input from a Western firm that helped Wang take flight globally.
With the American market, what he did was he teamed up with an American.
The two developed drones with cameras that could record aerial footage and presented DJI with American marketing.
You would go to the DJI offices in Shenzhen, and it looked like Silicon Valley because there was as many foreigners as Chinese. They didn't have Chinese on their name cards because they didn't want to be Huawei.
Although DJI grew from strength to strength, Wang's desire to avoid the same plight as Huawei failed in 2020.
The Financial Times reporting the U.S. looking to add more Chinese tech and healthcare companies to its economic blacklist. This would include the world's largest maker of drones, DJI included.
Like Huawei, DJI was labeled a national security threat, with U.S. companies prevented from supplying it parts. In 2021, it was alleged that its drones were used in the surveillance and repression of the Muslim Uyghurs in Xinjiang province. Drone footage of shackled and shaved prisoners was leaked, leading to widespread condemnation. DJI has denied that it poses a national security threat to the U.S. and has rejected claims it assisted the commission of human rights abuses in Xinjiang. But armies of drones are becoming more prevalent in the control of China's citizens. Astonishing footage of their use in monitoring and commanding the public swept social media and reached international news streams.
The country taking some extraordinary measures to contain this outbreak.
Drones were used to surveil the areas under quarantine, and so if you had people who were in the fields out for walks that they weren't supposed to be there, the drones would be used to basically identify them, and they actually had speakers on them to tell them that they needed to go home.
China has become the world's most prolific surveillance state.
It introduced concepts like social credit, which monitors the behavior of individuals and give a rating to that, which will then affect whether that individual can or cannot do certain things. For example, whether one can take a high-speed train to travel in China or not, whether one is allowed to get out of the country or not.
Positive ratings are given to those displaying good behavior, such as volunteering or using green technology. But a negative rating is applied to those not complying. For example, failing to recycle correctly or parking in the wrong spot. And if citizens are unsure what constitutes good behavior, they can turn to the digital equivalent of Mao's Little Red Book. For some, this is compulsory.
They are spending significant time on their phone on this app called Xi Jinping Thought, basically. They have to watch videos of Xi Jinping's speeches. They've got to read documents. And then they got to take tests, and the answers to that test go up to a central database.
The first thing I do when I wake up is to answer the test questions. Of course, it's meaningful, so your mindset won't be loosened.
And since 2018, Xi Jinping has made it mandatory for any organization over 3 members to contain a party cell. These cells support members, but only in return for growing loyalty to the regime.
The first consideration of Chinese education is to train people, embrace the party's leadership, and support the leader.
The smartphone created frictionless living, but not without a footprint. Combined with artificial intelligence, CCTV, QRs, sophisticated facial recognition, and Huawei's powerful 5G network, the party has taken what it needs from its tech tycoons.
Technology can be used to destabilize a very authoritarian system. It can also be used to strengthen the capacity of that authoritarian systems to stay in power.
Xi Jinping is highly popular among the masses. But could Xi fully close down the Bling dynasty? Or will the hostile landscape push the next generation abroad?
More and more Chinese entrepreneurs are leaving the country. So in the future, when we look at a Chinese billionaire list, we may see entrepreneurs who are working on businesses that aren't even available in China.
Given China's tightening authoritarian ideology, though, will the Western world ever be as welcoming to its highly ambitious next generation?
The Chinese government's actions and distrust is ruining their ability to be global entrepreneurs. That's a very, very sad thing to see happening.